like an algebra test to study for or something like that?
I wish.
And you probably have a lot of time dedicated to Tinder and things like that.
I mean, it's like doing the first 20 minutes of my day, wake up in the morning, gotta get your swipes in, you know?
Arman, how many podcast groupies do you think you have now?
Podcast groupies? Maybe like 2 or 3?
Well, hello there, FC Dallas Curious fan. Welcome to Third Degree, the podcast. My name is Peter, and we do have a trio today, along with, well, me and 2 other people. It is not Dan Crook, who apparently has decided he never wants to do the podcast again because I keep pointing out he's British, and he seems to be very sensitive about that. So instead, when you can't have a Brit, you get a Persian. Arman Kafai, the young millennial. Or wait, are you even qualified as a millennial? Aren't you actually Gen Z?
I don't know how that works. I mean, I'm 21 if that helps with anything going on 22.
Yeah, you're a punk. All right. ProSoccerUSA.com, and he's got his own very successful podcast, the Uncle Sam's Soccer Pod. Am I saying that? Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast, is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
All right. I bet you have more listeners than we do. And, of course, our fearless leader, the founder and editor of ThirdDegree.net and from the Dallas Morning News, Buzz Carrick. Come in, Buzz.
Hello, Peter. Calling in today from the Cotton Bowl, getting ready for the Dallas Cup triple-header opener.
Well, boys, Arman, it's nice to have you. You're here, unfortunately, for your debut on the pod on a sad day because it's a loser podcast. It's a show after a loss as the Huntsmen go to Philly, and they have to roll out the children and get mowed with a heartbreaking stoppage time goal. So much to talk about in this. But Buzz and Arman, my question is, what is the bigger point to blame? Is it the suspended players, the 3 vets that got suspended, or is it the fact this is a team whose depth is all based on teenagers?
Well, the bigger story for the week is the 3 suspended players. When you have some sort of rule broken, they knocks out, 3 guys with upwards of 100 starts each. That's a huge blow to your team, especially when you're also already missing a couple other starters from injury. So when you gut your team like that, that's a story for the week. The story for the bigger picture is that the other half of that coin, which is that the depth on this team is all youth. Now, there are some pro depth, but Luchi doesn't seem to use them. He's going all youth, all in, going to guys that you wouldn't expect to see. I wouldn't expect to have seen, and he went with them. So it's an interesting question.
Let's knock this out real quick. Does anybody have any idea what the team violation was? I know it was Pablo's birthday last week when they were headed to Salt Lake, and I think we also determined that whatever it was happened long before anybody left to go to Philadelphia.
Probably some farting, yeah. I mean, is that like a solid guess?
I mean, I don't know. We could guess till the cows come home. What we do know is that Luchi said that whatever it was definitely on the road because he said that they knew going into the week of training that that's the way it was gonna be. So it was something involving the trip to Salt Lake. And you can imagine. You can just guess what the various options would be in terms of travel and a club and young players. I mean, I don't think it's anything to be too hyper concerned about other than it's the young coach drawing the line the first time and saying, this is the way we are. You got to do what you got to do, so I'm okay with that.
Yeah, Arman, you're closer in age to the 3 guys that got suspended. I'm going to guess it was a curfew violation based on just a single game, but I don't know what you kids are up to these days, so maybe it was like eating Tide Pods or something. I don't know.
Tide Pods, yeah. I mean, they taste really good, man. What can I say? What can I say?
I'm sorry. I don't know. All right. Yeah, I'm just totally, I mean, who doesn't love to speculate? My guess is the 3 guys are out goofing off and they showed up back at the hotel late because, Buzz, I don't know how much behind the curtain you want to reveal, but you were on to the fact that something was going on because of the way training was taking place. I swear you and I had a conversation, on Wednesday or Tuesday of last week. You were like, oh, yeah, somebody got in trouble because X and X and X aren't training right now.
Yeah. Yeah, the two that were obvious were Grezzo and Gonzalez, Jesse Gonzalez. Grezzo didn't take a single shift with the first team, and Jesse was normal. He was out there, but he was almost non-existent in drills. The one you couldn't see was Aranguiz because he was playing with the second unit, but he usually plays with the second unit. Mosquera is the starter at left wing. So, I questioned Luchi about him, and he would not comment at all except to say that, you'll see something later in the week. And so that was sort of when I was sort of guessing someone's in trouble. But you can't report guessing. I mean, you can't do that. So, I then asked him official questions about squad rotations and changing things up, and he said some good things about sometimes your hand is forced, sometimes you make it by choice, and at this time of year, we're going to find out what we've got. So, you can only do so much when they won't talk about anything. And, we tried to preview that there was for sure that Gonzalez wasn't going to play, not Gonzalez, for sure that Grezzo wasn't going to play, and hint that Maurer probably might get a shot, so we put all that in there as best we could, based on the actual information we were able to obtain, which was just what we saw watching practice.
And not to dwell on this too much, I don't know why, but for whatever reason in my head, the trio, the holy trinity of Grezzo, Aranguiz, and Jesse Gonzalez as a threesome of trouble just doesn't seem to make sense to me. I don't know why in my head I wouldn't have picked those three guys to get in trouble, but I guess that's who it was. All right, let's move on. So the game kicks off. Dallas obviously rolls out with a lot of kids because of this, both through injury and the suspension, to see Thomas Roberts get his first full-on debut instead of a couple of other options that we'll get to. Things didn't seem to start too poorly at the beginning, and in fact, Hollingshead gets a really nice penalty, not a penalty kick, gets a free kick call when he tries to make a run just outside the box. And my question is, why hasn't Rito Ziegler been taking free kicks for this team the entire time he's been here?
Well, I mean, wasn't he called off like before? When Kellen, he also had Morrow there as well.
That's exactly that's kind of my point is I think I've seen more quality free kicks from Ziegler in the last few weeks than I ever saw from Mauro Diaz or Kellen Acosta, at least towards the end in the time that those three guys were all playing together.
Yeah, I guess it was about the middle of last season where he sort of took the ball and was like, I'm doing them from now on. And he started working, once or twice a week, you would see him do an extra 15, 20 minutes of free kicks after training. So, there was a point at which I don't know whether the coach Perea told him to or whether he just said, I'm doing it. From then on, he did it. And then in this season, that's continuing with Luchi.
No, yeah. The one thing that I like to point out is I think Ziegler, whenever he scores a set piece, he always posts it on his Instagram. So you can go through his Instagram and see all the free kicks and penalties. And if you go through like back in the days, you're like, wow, this guy's pretty good at set pieces. So, I mean, to see him finally, take that role on, and we're starting to see the benefits from it. It's pretty much, it's better than what it was last year. I'll tell you that, with Morrow and Kellen, aimless balls, sometimes go over the bar or whatever. I like what I'm seeing with Ziegler.
Well, both to be fair, both Morrow and Kellen did have magical stretches where they were putting balls straight on goal, and it just seemed to end. So hopefully that won't happen with Ziegler. And also, by the way, if I could hit free kicks like that, I'd be posting that shit on Instagram too. So no doubt about it. But it seemed to be after that, Philly seemed to figure out what was going on. They took over control of the game, and from that point forward, this was all Philly. And I think this is one of those games where we were seeing a byproduct of not just youth on the field, but maybe we were also seeing some inexperience at the coaching aspect of this too. Any thoughts about that, Buzz?
My main thought about that is the amount of faith he put in Roberts. I think Thomas Roberts is an extraordinarily gifted player, and he's going to be an extraordinarily good player. But when you think about the scenario on the road at Philly, missing a whole bunch of veterans, so your team is young, you're basically throwing the guy to the wolves there. It's going to be very difficult for him to have a good game. Now, Coach Gonzalez thought he had said Roberts had a pretty positive game, but I thought that the areas that he's weak in and the areas that he's still working on, which is game awareness, where am I on the field? When is it in the game? Should I try and do like an amazing play, or should I play simply? And when he tries to do an amazing play every time, he had like 5 turnovers in the defensive end. So for me, that's a tough place to start a guy for the first time ever on the road like that. So I would have liked to have seen him go to his veterans. Perhaps there were a couple different things he could have done. He could have started Hollingshead on the wing and put Pedrosa at left back. Some various ideas like that. There are other players he could have used. I just thought that it showed that he is 100% completely bought into the play the young guys. No matter what, they're good enough. They can play anywhere, anytime. And that's a little dangerous to me, a little risky, but I suppose it's trial by fire in another way too, and maybe in the long run it'll be good. I don't know. It's asking a lot.
Arman, one of the things I thought when I watched the game is that Thomas Roberts, who, like Buzz says, we all are super excited about, and the hype is very tall on the kid, but that performance in Philadelphia was an awful a lot like Paxton's first few appearances for FC Dallas, where he got in the game, seemed very unsure, didn't really have an impact, and those are it's not indicative of anything we may see 6 months down the road, but it may actually be more proof that making that jump at that age is way harder than maybe we all consider.
I mean, everyone from MLS Twitter to everyone's like, hey, play the kids, hashtag play the kids. I'm sure if MLS could, they'd sell a shirt that says play the kids and try to make as much money as possible off that. But look, when you do that, you're going to have those growing pains. And like you mentioned, with that comparison of Paxton and Thomas, look, it's these guys' first starts. They're still getting used to the game. You can't just expect magic to happen on their first ever starts. And you kind of saw that, especially in the road in MLS. I mean, where we always talk about, where everyone's pretty happy with a point on the road. It's really difficult. I mean, that's part of the growing pains. I think when Peter, I know you said this in your predictions, and I said my prediction as well. We both don't have Dallas make the playoffs in our initial predictions. Part of my reasoning behind that was that there's going to be some growing pains, especially with what Luchi had been saying in the offseason about playing, going all in on this youth. You're gonna have some growing pains. You're gonna make mistakes. Some players aren't gonna show up. They have to get used to the pro game. So I mean, you're gonna see results like this. And you know what? At the beginning of the season, I don't think it's that bad of a result to have. Might as well get some of those out of the way, and hopefully have them more ready for like the latter parts of the season when we all know MLS can flip on its head and you can make a playoff push.
Isn't part of what we're also figuring out, or one of the takeaways from this game, is the reality that as much as we are excited about young players coming out of the academy, seeing what our own product can do at an MLS level, there is a hard reality to the fact that when you get into games and you've got 1-goal leads late in games, not only do your kids on the field have to figure out how to hold those leads and play smart, but the coach has to be, experienced in understanding when to make certain substitutions. And I did think some of his moves, in terms of the starting 11, and maybe even more specifically later in the game when he did finally make some substitutions, may not have been the right ones. Do you agree with that at all, Buzz?
Yeah, I think the John Nelson sub in particular was the wrong one, and I think Luchi knows that. We talked a little bit this week, and he said this is all part of their learning process as a coach too, that they will analyze everything they did. In particular, when he put Nelson in as a left midfielder, that's not his natural position. And Jim Curtin, who's Philadelphia's coach, said after the game that the second that happened, the second they took off Barrios, who was completely gassed, by the way. Barrios needed to come off. But when they put Nelson on, Curtin said they immediately recognized that he was the wrong player for that position. He's not a wide mid, and he's wide back. And so they overloaded that side and went at him. I mean, they clearly exploited that. And in the end, that decision, not John Nelson's play, I mean, his play was poor, but his play was poor because he was used incorrectly. So that decision cost the game. Like Dallas had a chance to win the game, and they did not, and then tie the game, and they didn't because of that choice.
Yeah, I'll talk about Andresic here in a second, but when you consider his options, and again, limited, we all agree because of injury and suspension, not using Pedroso or Bresson or maybe even starting, and I think you were the one that brought this up, Buzz, Tomasi. Like, why not Tomasi instead of Roberts, in terms of playing that left wing position? One, he's older and does at least have some experience playing at a pro level. And two, it's actually his natural position, and it's not Thomas Roberts' natural position.
Tuamasi was on the bench, and he has not only does he have a whole half a season of experience in the USL, which Roberts doesn't have, he also has 3-4 years of playing in college on that wing position, which Roberts doesn't have. So, and plus he's older and more mature and probably can handle the university. So that's obvious. But in terms of the subs, I would guess, and I don't know, but I would guess that Luchi's kicking himself for not going to Pedroso and moving Hollingshead to the wing. I mean, that's the obvious answer because that solves that side and it solves the shape. I would have liked to have seen Servania there because that would have helped with the possession in the midfield. He could have put Paxton on the wing, and Paxton can steal a game up there, and that way Servania could have helped Cerrillo and Hayes hold the middle together with some possession. But the fact that he didn't, the fact that he thought Cobra was his best option, I think that says a little bit about where Brandon Servania is in his thinking too. So overall, the whole sub pattern and all the choices did not go well.
There's a part of me that wonders if there isn't some mad scientist thinking going on here in Luchi's part, which is, hey, it's early in the season. This is a good time to experiment a little bit. Hey, let's not let's throw the kid in the fire and see what happens, because if we end up blowing it, I can always either, if he's really bad at the beginning, I can sub him out. I'm just wondering if maybe it is what we saw a byproduct of Luchi's own inexperience or him just being brave and feeling and having a high level of confidence, whether deserved or not.
Because he will need to experiment a little bit, right? Because, the team is going to lose plenty of players with the U20s. U20 World Cup, Gold Cup. Hell, you could potentially even see, a key star like Matt Hedges maybe getting called for the Gold Cup. There's plenty of international competitions. I think the experimenting now is a very real possibility, but I also that Nelson sub really was the one where I sat there and was like, I don't know if this is the right move. And especially when Jim Curtin comes out and says, as soon as we did that, we went to a 3-back line, shift Bedoya out to the wing-back on Nelson's side to go after him. That's when you know, okay, like maybe that wasn't the best move out there. But I do feel like there honestly might be a little bit of experimentation to say, hey, what's our depth, what we got? Especially with all these guys that are probably going to be gone for international competitions. Luchi also said that during training, right, Buzz? Like he did mention that.
I can't remember whether it was you or Sylvia that asked that question, and he did say that is the silver lining of this whole thing, is that they are getting a look at what they may have to look towards when all those things happen in the summer. We're finding out what we have, so there is that hindsight aspect of it, that analysis of it, that they are going to take advantage of.
Now, out of the 6, I'm just going to say attacking players, midfield and forwards, 4 of them were teenagers. This is the most bizarre stat. Of the 4 teenagers, Paxton was the oldest of the 4, which is Ferreira, Pamecol, Thomas, and Cerrillo. But the other part of this that I thought most interesting is the player who I thought had the worst game overall, and I'm really starting to worry about a little bit, is Ja'Cory Hayes. I thought Ja'Cory was really, really poor, and I don't know if that was a byproduct of him, who, he's also a very young player himself, but he's not a byproduct of the academy. Remember, Ja'Cory was drafted by the team a couple of years ago. Was he just trying too hard on Saturday?
Well, he's 23. He's the same age as Grezzo. My assumption is that they were asking him to play the Acosta kind of role, to sort of command the middle and link the middle, and that may be a little bit of an ask for Ja'Cory. He has not gotten as much playing time as he would like. The start of last year, he looked fantastic for the first 10 games or so. He was arguably the MVP at that point, but then the wheels have come off on him, and I will also add that I don't think he responded very well this week. He did not look particularly good in training either. He probably is feeling really down at this point in time. I think we have to learn and know that you can't expect Ja'Cory Hayes to carry a midfield. When you got him in there with Paxton, who is a great player, but he's not playing a control the midfield role these days. He's playing a game changer kind of role. And then you got him with Cerrillo, who's a rookie, an 18-year-old rookie. So that's a big ask for Jacori. Like if you want to plug him in with Acosta and Grezzo, no problem. I can fill that role. So that's a lot to ask, and I think he's probably feeling it this week. That was a bad moment for him, and I'm sure he's not happy.
And then, is anybody else equally as concerned as I am about Reggie Cannon, who on Saturday was kind of like the Monty Python, the knight from Monty Python and the Holy Grail, who I thought his leg was going to fall off at one point. I couldn't believe he actually gutted, at least the way he was holding and carrying himself and limping, and he just consistently looked injured through the entire game, yet just tried to keep battling on. And I'm just wondering, how hurt is the kid, and should they be considering giving him some time off?
I think personally that they should. I mean, last year you could argue that he honestly probably should have gotten some time off as well. This year, I mean, he's injured. He had that week off. I mean, he's coming in. I think, Hollingshead has been playing pretty okay. There might be an opportunity at some point in these upcoming matches to be like, hey, look, Reggie, just be on the bench today. I'll give you a game off, and you can push Ryan to right back, and maybe end up starting Pedroso at left back, or John Nelson, who Luchi looks like he really likes and does really like. I do think he does need it, because Reggie's very hard on himself as well. I don't know if he'll let himself take a break, but it might be one of those things where the athletic trainer's like, hey, you need to take off a game.
Yeah, I think he recognizes that the team is banged up, and so he's trying to play through his own, personal discomfort. I would guess that they wouldn't let him play if there was any real damage in the ankle, that it probably just is sore, so every time somebody kicks him, it hurts again. So I wouldn't mind seeing him get a game off. There is an option, lots of options. Nelson plays right back. I don't like Ryan Hollingshead on the right at all. Not that I don't love Ryan Hollingshead, but for some reason on the right he's a mess.
Yeah, well, remember his one bad performance this year was when he filled in for Reggie.
Filled in on the right. So Nelson can play there fine, or Brian Reynolds actually has been playing really well for North Texas and looks really good in training right now. He's actually feeling really confident. So, depending on who you're playing, it might be worth rolling that kid out there and give him a game. It would do wonders for his confidence.
And I don't mean to dogpile on the Cobra, but goodness gracious. I know I keep saying this, Buzz, you've been warning everybody to lower your expectations about the guy. But when he went out there, I was stunned to see him get flat out run by a center back when I believe he actually had the lead on, and got run, a ball got dumped over the top and he got outrun by a center back, which is never a good thing. And then two, I was even more surprised to see him continuously fail to win aerial balls in the amount of time that he was on the field. He had one really good header, which was in the box, that put the ball across the face of the goal, but I think I counted 5 or 6 other area balls where he just got bossed out of the way, and I was really surprised to see that. And I'm just not sure I get why they even signed this guy in the first place.
Well, I don't know the answer to the question of why they signed him. I imagine that they scouted him on tape and they scouted him in person, and then they must have thought he looked good. But, you're seeing in the game exactly what I've been seeing all spring, and I've tried not to just destroy the guy. I try to, let people have a chance to see him. And I don't see anything in this game that I haven't just seen all spring. I mean, this is exactly the same performance. I admire his tenacity. I admire his positivity. I admire his work ethic. He just doesn't have enough for me to be playing in Major League Soccer. The worst moment of the game for me from him was the choice he makes to pass from the wing back to Cerrillo, who is marked, standing right in front of the back four, and to an 18-year-old kid. And granted, Cerrillo flubbed the reception, but that's a horrible decision of a pass to that player in that position, and that directly led to the PK that they got.
Well, so I'll also point out he tried to make the pass with the outside of his right foot, and he put it wide of Cerrillo, who had to go try to chase it down and couldn't get to it. There was some question as to who was at fault there. I felt like it was more Cobra's decision-making and the execution of the pass. You could say that if he had made a better pass directly to Cerrillo's feet, and then he fumbled it, then it would be his fault. But I think the problem started with Cobra's decision to try to play that ball and the way that he tried to play the ball.
Well, no goal is ever one person's fault, but I agree with you that the impetus of that problem came from the initial decision from Cobra. I thought it was a terrible moment, but I mean, I'm sure Arman could back me up. We don't see anything in training that doesn't directly show up in games. It's not like he's crushing it in training.
Yeah, I mean, Buzz, you're spot on. I mean, even with Coleman, you'd see him have some bursts of hey, he's doing pretty good in training. I remember one time he smashed a bicycle kick in, and you're like, oh, wow, this is maybe something there. But I mean, there's nothing you're looking at it right there where you're like, okay, this is not standing out to me. I mean, are we at a point where we're saying, hey, come on, when are you coming back? We want to see you. Are we getting to that point?
Well, at the end of the day, what I'm more concerned about is now while Jesus has played very well and he scored a goal and he's had a couple of nice assists, it's not like he's getting a lot of opportunities to put shots on goal. He's at 0.6 shots per game in the minutes that he's played this season, which is very, very low and ranks him not just low in the league, but almost way down on the team. And this gets back into the larger question about that I want to get into is, we're 6 games into this. What do we really know about what Luchi's trying to do and how well it's going at this point? There's some really fascinating statistics behind this team at this point. After 6 games, they're second in overall possession in the league, but they're 22nd in shots per game.
Yeah, that's the whole mantra that Luchi's been running with lately is this possession with purpose idea. They do a really nice job of holding the ball, but they don't do enough with it in the final third. And I think Ferreira's low shots is a byproduct of that. I think they've had a problem for a while now of getting the ball into the striker in positive situations. And when they do, we've seen good results from it with Jesus in there. So I think it's just an evolution of Luchi's system. They work on it all the time in training, the build forward, up the wings and up the middle both. They're trying to be better about that. And it's easy to start with this base possession, this base deep setup, and then try and get better going forward. And I think that's going to be the question of the season is that'll be the difference between them being an okay team or a decent team and a good team. Is can they figure this out, this progression forward, and get opportunities through Ferreira in the box? Yeah,
part of the other point I was trying to make is that while Ferreira has an assist and a goal, his lack of real productivity at this point isn't that much different than what we were seeing from Badji. And so maybe my question is if Luchi can correct some of these other issues, maybe he can get something out of Badji at this point down the road.
Well, you can just look at the number of touches that any striker has when they play with SC Dallas. The number of touches is down near 20. You'll have Hedges and Ziegler will be 80, 90, 100, and the striker will be 20 or 15. It's that's the balance is not right yet. So once they figure that balance out, it'll be better. But it just takes time. And it could be Badji. It could be. I think Jesus's runs are better. I think his positional sense is better and his game reading is better than Badji. But Badji's pretty quick. Badji's a hard matchup. There's not a lot of people in the league can keep up with that guy.
All right, so there's 3 other stats that I saw earlier today when I was kind of digging through this that really caught me off guard, although they make sense when you kind of cross-reference them against the eyeball test. Crosses, they're 23rd in the league in crossing. They're 23rd in the league in dribbles, which I want to focus on here in a second. And this is the one stat that really caught me off guard. They are 22nd in the league in offside being called against them. They are averaging only 1 offside call a game, which is really interesting for a team that has been trying to do at least a little bit of counterattacking, especially when many times that seems to be their greatest strength at this point is trying to find Barrios in space when they regain possession in their own third of the field. And so I guess my question to you guys is, getting back to what I asked earlier, Arman, I'll start with you. What do you really feel like we know about this team so far after 6 games? Is that even enough to really generate an opinion?
I honestly don't think so. mainly we know it's a possession-heavy team that obviously want to dictate the game with possession of the ball. But outside of that, that base idea, pressing to win back the ball as well. Outside of those, two kind of general ideas, I mean, we're kind of missing something. And those stats that you point out, Peter, I mean, I'll point out another stat too. I mean, they were, I want to say they were first in the league in terms of a defensive possession at one point. I want to say they still are. Compare that to LAFC, who's sitting at first in the league at possession in their opponent's own third at 15%. I mean, LAFC is top of the league right now. I think it's too early because Luchi's definitely going to tweak his thing. It's not like he's like Bob Bradley or anything that has a specific style he's going to play with, week in and week out, and you know what to look for. I think Luchi's still trying to tinker it a little bit, and I think part of that's going to come with building off in that base, as Buzz was talking about, of that building up the field, but that they have to get more in that final third because. Like we've been saying, possession, is great, but if you can't make penetrating runs, if you can't, make those threatening balls, if you can't get and take some shots on goal, you're not going to win a game.
Yeah, the dribbles stat of being 23rd, I think, is really revealed in the fact that the only player that I feel like there's two players. There appears to be only two players who seem to be willing to take on anybody with the ball, and that's Barrios and Paxton. And we're all delighted by Paxton, but certainly Luchi's going to need other people to have the courage to start taking on people with the ball.
One of the reasons I like Paxton on the wing is because he will run at people out there. And Barrios is less dribbling, more kick it and chase it. Thomas Roberts will run at people too with the ball at his feet. But, we shouldn't be expecting the team to rely on him. We want to get him, somewhere in the neighborhood of 10, 12 appearances off the bench this year. But if he's the answer, you're in trouble. But Aranguiz is not a dribble at you kind of player. He's a possession player, and so is Acosta, and so is Grezzo, and so is Cerrillo. So they're lacking another player that can do that. The person it could be possibly is Santiago Mosquera, but he's having a tough Santiago Mosquera. He's having a tough start of the season. He's had a little bit of a knock. He's had a little bit of a sickness, and now he did look great on Wednesday. He actually scored a goal from midfield. So I'm hoping he'll be the starter this week and get in there and do some damage. But until they get that balance and get that third person up there on the wing attacking, they might have troubles. At some point you might as well try a Tuamasi, or if Francis Tuahene gets healthy, you might try him too, because you got to get somebody to give you on that side what you're getting from Barrios on the other side and from Paxton up the middle.
Well, that's an excellent segue, Buzz. Kudos to you, because coming up this weekend is a massively huge bear trap of epic proportions. The Timbers roll into town. They are one of 5 MLS teams that have yet to win a game. They're on this, what now appears to be their turn to do the extended road trip to start a season because our stadium is either being built or reconstructed, and so they are defeated, not undefeated. They are fully defeated, and they look like a former shell of themselves. The other odd stat to start the season, both MLS Cup opponents last year, neither one of them has won a game, Atlanta or Portland. So Portland rolls into town. There's a bit of a chip on Dallas's shoulder because this is the team that knocked him out of the playoffs last year. Portland did go on to MLS Cup and lost, obviously, to Atlanta. Goodness, you can see this written all over it, that this is a game that Dallas could walk into thinking, oh, these guys haven't won, and then end up farting it away.
Yeah, Arman could back me up on this. I actually asked Luchi about this on Wednesday, and he got a little animated. I mean, he clearly knows that Portland is a really good team. They're basically rolling out the same lineup that was in the final. And all their games on the road is hurting them, obviously, hurting their mentality and making it tough for them to recover. But there's no mistake, this is a super talented team. And Luchi got a little animated when he got to the part about they're the ones that knocked us out of the playoffs, and we remember that. And you darn well are sure we're going to be up for this one. He said, my guys know it. I don't have to tell them, but we're telling them anyway because this is a big one. And after the performance in Philly, they need this one. They need to come home and stomp on a team that's down and put them away and take care of business.
They need to, because Portland has looked, I mean, maybe a shell might be an understatement. They looked awful in a lot of these games. I think the only game that I saw that they looked pretty in it was the game against the Galaxy, And we all know the Galaxy, without Zlatan, they're just kind of they're kind of just I mean, they just lost to San Jose 3-0 last weekend, and San Jose looked pretty bad as well until they played Portland, and when they looked like they were on fire. It's a classic game of don't underestimate your opponent, and you need to not underestimate your opponent in this, because while Portland is bad, I mean, they still have a guy like Diego Valeri, right? They still have Sebastian Blanco, right? These guys are great. These guys are great players. It's just something's wrong defensively, and there's bleeding goals left and right.
Yeah, minus 10 goals differential. That's 15 goals allowed. That's in 5 games. That's ridiculous.
Well,
game.
They're conceding at a minimum 2 goals in their last 8 away matches dating back to last year. So it will be interesting to see how this all plays out coming in. And of course, thank the soccer gods, I finally get to attend an FC Dallas game this year, because while it is on Saturday, it is Saturday night. We get our first night game of the season, and I won't be on the radio doing the radio show, so I can actually attend an actual a game up in Frisco. I'm super excited and geeked about that. So any other thoughts or things to look out for, Buzz, that you think people should be aware of rolling into Saturday?
Well, I think that Luchi's still continuing with his 5 or 6 guys for 3 spots in midfield. I don't think there's any doubt at all after that way that looked last week that Grezzo won't be back in there. I think at this point it's a coin flip between Mosquera and Aranguiz on the left, although the way Mosquera played on Wednesday, I would pick Mosquera. The other questions are, will Ziegler end up getting a suspension for his kick out? Nothing has happened yet. I mean, the initial email from the league came out on Tuesday without him in it, and I thought that meant he was in the clear, but some other people have pointed out that occasionally they drop something later in the week, so stay tuned on that one. And the other thing was that Matt Hedges came out of the Philly game in the concussion protocol. So I actually talked to him about it. He said he feels great. He said, I've had these before. I know my body. He said, I'm fine. I'm training on Thursday. God forbid something goes wrong with the review from the doctors, though, and he's out. Then it's really interesting because you get Bresson in there with Ziegler. And if Ziegler's out, then you're going to get Bresson and Callum Montgomery, that'll be out of nowhere. So,
oh God,
I wouldn't mind seeing Bresson get a game, but if it's going to be with Callum Montgomery together, like changing both center backs at once, that makes me nervous. Hopefully Ziegler and Hedges are both clear. I expect they will be, but you might possibly get a chance to see Bresson this week. Otherwise, I'm assuming that. It's standard ops, and Jesse Gonzalez will be back in goal.
And are we going to assume that it's since Acosta is still out with an ankle injury, and the aforementioned poor showing by Jacori, that's going to be Cirillo in there next to Grezzo more than likely, right?
Yeah, I would think so, and it'll probably be like it was the last time that happened, where Grezzo actually was the sort of higher linking player slightly, with Paxton kind of more 10-ish, more of a 6.5, 10 kind of look. I think that's what you're going to see.
That sounds spot on to me. It's Mr. Third Degree giving you exactly what we asked for, right? I think that's spot on. I mean, Buzz brings up that good point. I honestly wouldn't be surprised to see Ziegler suspended. Looking back in that kick out, that looks like probably a 1-game suspension from what I see. Getting to see Bresson. Sorry, you got me saying Bresson, Buzz. Come on.
Oh, is it Bresson? I've never actually heard you say it.
It's Bresson. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Bresson.
Does he play? Does he play with his pinkies out too?
Yeah, he sips wine too on the pitch.
I got a question for you guys, and I don't mean to drag all of my drama and whining about VAR into this, but with that particular incident with Ziegler, and then the much viral video of Kellen and Nani going at it in the Colorado-Orlando game. Is anybody else frustrated by the fact that we have this VAR system and that we as viewers are seeing this stuff going on, and it just seems as if there is no attention paid to it from the system that was supposed to be in place to pay attention to it?
I find it frustrating on 2 levels. One is that I'm not even clear what all it can review. half the time people are like VAR, and I'm like, can it do that? Can it review that? I don't even know. And the other thing is, I feel like that the referees that are involved with the VAR almost don't want to show up their compatriots. Like, unless there is something super blatant or unless there's a goal, it's like, I feel like they're like, we're not going to make a guy look stupid when it's, I mean, somehow maybe there needs to be a separation between referees and VAR referees, if that's even possible. I don't even know, but the whole system to me is super confusing. I'm not anywhere near smart enough about that system to be able to have an answer for you.
Well, I can tell you to answer your first one. Yes, VAR was one of the very clear dictates and abilities of VAR is to go back and spot red card fouls that a ref may have missed. And by the letter of the law, the Ziegler incident and in my, again, these are my opinions, the Nani incident are both clear red card moments that somebody in the booth had to have seen because they were showing them to us repeatedly on television. Steve and Mark were talking about the Ziegler moment. You could feel the tension growing because we were like, he's going to he's going to get the call into the ear and he's going to throw Ziegler out because Ziegler. I mean, and let me also say the guy elbowed Ziegler in the back of the head. He should have at least gotten a yellow for the foul that he committed to begin with. But Ziegler's reaction and retaliation was a red card worthy incident. The Nani situation is exactly the same thing. And I think my biggest frustration is I understand how the process works, which is the VAR official says, you know what, it's not a clear or obvious error that the referee didn't call that a red card, but we as viewers aren't told that. It's almost as if we just have to assume that somebody is making that decision, and that unless the center referee decides to go over and watch it on the monitor and then make a change in his own decision, you can just safely guess that it was adjudged not to be worthy of taking on the next level of VAR, which is the center referee deciding to go over and look at it himself. Just as a side note, what will be fascinating to watch, what we're understanding is going to happen in the EPL next season, is that decisions of those magnitude will not be made by the center referee. It will be made by the VAR official. So if those situations were to happen in an EPL game next year, they don't call down to the center referee and say, hey, I think we saw something that you missed. You need to go check it out on the monitor. The VAR official will say, hey, you missed this. Ziegler kicked the guy. Go give him a red card. And that's going to be an interesting difference in change in how the EPL institutes VAR and how Major League Soccer and many other places are using it today.
I mean, to be honest with you, I feel like other leagues that implemented VAR after MLS have already done a better job, right? I mean, we see I want to say, was it during the FA Cup? I want to say they had the replays on like what the VAR was watching on like the big screens in the stadium as well at Wembley, and I've seen leagues do that, but in MLS we're just stuck guessing. We're like, are they reviewing this or are they reviewing this? Like, we don't know. And that's one thing where I just don't understand how MLS continues to fail at this, while other leagues who haven't had as much time with VAR are almost excelling, quote unquote.
I'm not sure, Arman, I may disagree with you. I'm not sure MLS is failing at VAR, and certainly being one of the pioneers of it, they're going to end up catching most of the slings and arrows and criticism. For example, I think Champions League has a huge VAR problem because it appears VAR is calling, penalty kicks out of the blue that nobody on the field thinks is a violation. The handball in the game midweek with Tottenham and Man City, the handball call between PSG and Manchester United. Those were calls that nobody on the field complained about until somebody from VAR watched it in super slow motion and said, oh, hold on a second, you missed something. So I'm not sure that system, the way that is instituted, is any better per se. I think Major League Soccer has gotten and improved their VAR implementation a lot since last year. But that's the one thing that I get really frustrated about is these incidences that are very clear and obvious that we all see as fans, yet we don't quite understand where that breaking point is of what is considered a clear and obvious error on the referee's part that suddenly flips the switch to progress into the next level of VAR.
Yeah, as always, communication would help. They need to have a way to communicate to broadcast, to radio, to maybe even staff or something. We looked at that. No, no decision. Some sort of level of communication so that we don't sit there wondering. Like at the time, I was like, did they even look at this? Are they looking at it? I have no idea. So. And
then to kind of as we wrap things up, North Texas Soccer Club will be playing after or before. That's
after.
It is after.
It might be late though if it rains.
Yes, well, you never know. We may have another
midnight start. Yeah.
Super late start. At least it's not snowing like it's supposed to in multiple places around Major League Soccer this weekend. It will be exciting to get an opportunity to watch those guys. The Pepe train is chugging along at very high speed. John Arnold wrote an article about him this week for us over at the Dallas Morning News, and just wondering if that kid's going to continue to put in goals and just raise his value, and then suddenly getting all the fan noise of when exactly are we going to see this guy come play for the senior team? You just know that's coming, right?
Well, Luchi says he's playing for North Texas Saturday night, and then we'll join the 17s for the rest of the GA Cup afterwards. We'll be there if you want to catch some Pepe hype train.
We do love the Pepe hype train. Okay, Portland, the Timbers, and then their always impressive group of people that live here in Dallas that support them, because you all know there's a lot of people that used to live in Portland that all now live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Will fill up their area of their section of the stadium. The game kicks off at 7 o'clock. And then the other thing, it's my favorite time of year. It's Christmas and spring. The 40th edition of the Dallas Cup is upon us, and will kick off on Sunday. By the way, I'm in a hurry to get this podcast recording over because my two English referee homestays arrive here in the next couple of hours. I'm excited to meet them and completely ass-whip them for 10 days. Anything in particular, or a team or player, Buzz and Arman, and I'll start with you, Buzz, that you're particularly interested or excited to see over the course of the tournament?
Well, I obviously focus on the FC Dallas, U19s and U17s, but I will say that the Sunday night kickoff marquee game at the Cotton Bowl, Tigres, the defending champions, versus Liverpool, that should be a really good game. That crowd should be really good because you're going to get a lot of Dallas walk-up kind of crowd to see Tigres play. And
Liverpool.
And Liverpool. Well, the walk-up East Dallas crowd will be Tigres crowd, but Liverpool will draw well, and so will Tigres. So in between the walk-ins and all the players, and then the game before that, which has got Monterey in it, you're likely to have a really nice crowd down at the Cotton Bowl. That could be a heck of a fun evening for those two games. And then the other thing is just the general idea that the super group of the 19s and the 14 supers, both those, any kind of games of those two groups are outstanding because they're pulling out the very best top end, super high talented teams and grouping them together. So even the group games between those super group 19s and the super 14s, those games are better quality than almost anything you can see in the United States. Spectacularly good soccer, and I recommend trying to catch them if you can.
I'm always interested to see how the other MLS academies play. So, I mean, the super group, you have NYCFC, TFC, Salt Lake, and Dallas, obviously. I mean, last year when I went to watch some games, last year or 2 years ago, I saw Salt Lake play, and they were fun to watch as an academy team as well. I'm interested to see NYCFC, as a team that has been building their academy over those last 4 years. Like, how do they stack up, with the rest of the pack? How do they look, compared to especially Dallas Academy? I always like making Dallas Academy that high litmus test and then comparing and see where everyone else lies. I mean, that's always interesting to me. But as Buzz says, the Cotton Bowl games are always great. Always fun, always good atmosphere.
Let me throw one more name at you. Jake Ryan, Bobby Ryan's son, is on the U12 FC Dallas.
Oh my God!
Yeah, FC Dallas.
Oh no!
FC Dallas 12 South. They have two 12 DA teams. He's on the 12 South team. He wears number 19. Hashtag JR19. Jake. So try and catch him if you're into the Bobby Ryan nostalgia. Great kid. You
can't miss him.
If he's good.
You can't miss him. He looks just like Bobby.
Looks exactly like him. It's awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing him play. I haven't seen him play yet. I want to see him play.
Shocking blonde hair. Oh, that's crazy. That makes me feel super old. I was already feeling old when I hear Arman talk about the Cotton Bowl, and I realized Arman, like when you and I were going to the original Dallas Burn games in the Cotton Bowl, Arman was, still in diapers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your first? When and where, Arman, was your first Dallas soccer game?
Ooh, we're going way back, huh?
Yeah, way back.
So I would say my first one, Dallas-wise, would have to be the year the Toyota Stadium opened up. Because I can't believe that, huh?
He didn't even go to any of the Burn games of the Cotton Bowl.
Listen. I was like 8. My dad still to this day hates MLS. So I was like, yo, brand new stadium, let's go watch some soccer. And he was down, so I finally convinced him to go. And we went and watched that. I grew up in a household that hates MLS, but what can I do? Like, I was banned from watching it.
You have to remember, Peter, that half the team now was born after the league started.
I know.
The league started in 96. Paxton's in 99. Cervina's in 99. The other kids are 00s and 01s. I mean, we've been covering the team longer than they've been alive. And they're full pros. It's ridiculous.
Goodness gracious. All right. Well, that's a fantastic note to end our fun-filled edition. Goodness, that's the craziest thing. Arman, please remind everybody where they can read and hear your fine work.
So if you just follow me on Twitter at Arman Kafai, I plug all my stuff on there, so it's much easier than if I list everything out. I'm trying to keep it short and sweet for you, Peter.
Yeah, well, a good thing you've got a name that's easy to spell. Awesome. All right, Buzz, hey, by the way, Buzz, on Buzz's Twitter account, 3rd Degree Net, make sure you go check out and buy one of Buzz's awesome growing collection of T-shirts. Your L Train Pepe T-shirt is awesome, by the way.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. And you guys, you and John and Dan are doing a ton of Dallas Cup coverage and GA Cup coverage over the next 10 days, right?
Yeah, we're trying to get the 19s and the 17s covered pretty much wall to wall if we can, and then we're going to cherry pick some of the other teams, mostly academy teams, because our bid is always path to the pros. That's what we're interested in. So we're going to try and cherry pick some teams out everywhere else, and we'll have lots of photographs from the Dallas Cup too. I have 3 or 4 different photographers that are going to shoot some various stuff. So we'll have plenty of Dallas Cup and academy coverage.
All right, excellent. Well, Arman, thanks for showing up. I can't tell you how proud Buzz and I are that we gave you your start over at 3rd Degree, and now you're a full-fledged soccer media
something like that.
Highbrow guy.
Student.
Yeah, kiddo.
Something like that.
Yeah, excellent. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Thank you, Buzz. Thank you, Arman. Thank you guys for listening, and we will talk to you next week on 3rd Degree, the podcast.